bombshell Judicial Watch report proves Biden's FBI has a Project Veritas investigation ties and connections to Pfizer. Now, wait a minute. What? How'd this happen? Judicial Watch, and thank goodness for them, just like Project Veritas, love both these guys and what they do, filed a Freedom of Information Act request for any and all emails, information regarding Pfizer and the government's connection to the investigation of Project Veritas. If you recall, we had it on this program. We had James O'Keefe and RC and the folks that work for him and all his brave journalists on to expose that Pfizer several times last year, did what? That whistleblower that came out and exposed that fetal cells, yes, were used in the production of the Pfizer vaccine. In another video, a Pfizer scientist admitted that our antibodies are better than the vaccine. All these things Project Veritas exposed. And then what happened? Remember? We had them on. The FBI kicked in their doors, took their phones, raided their homes, 3 or 4 journalists with them. But why? They were just exposing facts and the truth. And also whistleblowers that worked for the company exposing internal documents of what they had found out about the vaccine. What's wrong with you getting that information, folks? Nothing. Now Judicial Watch first filed that Freedom of Information Act request back on December 21st. That was regarding the connection between the FBI investigating Veritas after, again, they exposed Pfizer. On January 6th, the FBI denied the request, saying that the records responsive to your request are law enforcement records. There is a pending or prospective law enforcement proceeding relevant to these responsive records, and release of the information could reasonably be expected to interfere with enforcement proceedings. Meaning, sorry, we're not giving you up the goods because it's going to make us look bad. But we'll act like, well, it's an ongoing investigation, so we can't release information. That's what they always say. On January 10th, the FBI denying another request regarding Pfizer emails by Judicial Watch. Why won't you give that up? The FBI said, please be advised, the FBI will neither confirm nor deny, I love that, confirm nor deny the existence of such records. Kind of reminds me of when Senator Cruz asked them the other day, the FBI gal, we showed you the clip of, were there FBI informants or FBI agents involved in January 6th? And she just said, I can't comment, I can't comment, I can't comment. That's what's happening, folks, when you weaponize a Department of Justice and an FBI to do your bidding, and that's what the Biden regime has done. To discuss more of this cover-up and the connection between Pfizer and Biden's regime and why Project Veritas is being targeted, another brave journalist out there, this guy, the president of Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton. Tom, thanks for coming back on the program, and God bless you and thank you for what you're doing out there. This is a lot of runaround. It's the old Potomac two-step. You're filing the right things. You're asking for the information. We're supposed to be allowed to see it as Americans, and nope, mum's the word. You can't get it.
Yeah, well, sometimes when you're told no, you learn something from that. And normally the FBI doesn't confirm or deny investigations. In this case, they oddly did. And it ought to be disturbing, as you point out, that a journalist organization is subjected, evidently, based on their own information, that they produced to us. They wrote it to us in their own letter, based on connections to Pfizer. You know, so Pfizer has the FBI at its beck and call to target a journalist organization that reported things that were inconvenient to Pfizer's bottom line.
Right.
It ought to be disturbing not only to conservatives, but frankly to all Americans who care about the First Amendment.
Yeah. Well, look, we know the hold and grip that Big Pharma has on the swamp in D.C. Let's be real. On both sides of the aisle, I'm sorry, I won't name names, but we all know Republicans have taken money over the years from Big Pharma too. These guys have a stronghold on the swamp. You're in it every day, Tom. You know it. And yeah, when you're talking about bottom line, the stuff that James O'Keefe and his team at Project Veritas were putting out there, which was factual, it was from a whistleblower, there was internal documents that proved it. Of course the FBI, it's been weaponized. The DOJ, we all know this. Obama started doing it. Biden's just picking up the playbook from Obama when he was with him in the White House and using them to go after political enemies. And James O'Keefe and you, sir, are huge enemies to this regime because you're exposing the truth. And bottom line, you're talking about billions that Pfizer is making off the American taxpayer with these prearranged deals for the vax. I mean, come on, we're already talking about a 4th booster. How much money are they making? Let's be real.
Yeah, and the irony is what James and Project Veritas reported. Why was it so important that Pfizer would risk what the news that they're facing now, that the FBI is being used to push a vendetta, evidently, against James? What are they so afraid of? If the vaccines are so safe and effective, this ought to be just white noise to them. But obviously, James hit a sore spot here. And the idea now that the FBI, on the heels of this outrageous raid on O'Keefe's home, to pursue some, fake crime concerning President Biden's daughter, her diary, whether someone took it improperly, it's absurd.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up.
The FBI it can't be trusted, and you see that with not only the raid on O'Keefe's home, but this confirmation they're working hand in glove with this private entity and I interpret it as payback for O'Keefe working with Pfizer whistleblowers to expose what's really going on in areas they're uncomfortable about. And specifically, one of the big things that the big media doesn't want to talk about, certainly the vaccine makers don't like to talk about, is the use of fetal organs from the bodies of unborn human beings killed by abortions to develop vaccines and to test their safety.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a dirty little secret. No one wants to talk about it. We've exposed it. We know it's happening. And boom, someone else talks about it. He gets subject to an FBI investigation. This is Watergate, except a little bit worse than Watergate all over again, because they do it in plain sight with the approval of the media and Congress and all the law enforcement agencies that are supposed to be saying no to this abuse.
And just think, Tom, this was the 70s, the 80s. There would be journalists coming to the aid and side and defense of James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, screaming from the rooftops on what the FBI is doing. But this is what, I saw an interview, James did a podcast the other day, and I think you may even reposted it. I reposted it on my story, I think, of the meme that's got how old school journalists used to have the people, we the people behind them, megaphone, the meme says, screaming at the politicians and the government. Now the meme is, here's the government screaming at the journalist, and the journalist is screaming at the people, whatever the government tells them. How in the hell did we come so far and fall so far in this country when it comes to journalistic integrity just in a couple decades? It's disgusting, Tom.
Well, in my experience, journalists are generally leftists. They're also lazy. I mean, a lot of it is what passes for journalism in Washington, D.C. is just gossip. It's just gossip reporting. It's like reading Hollywood entertainment reporting, but in the political sphere. So the actual journalism that takes place with groups like Project Veritas and, frankly, Judicial Watch, which, frankly, does more honest journalism about government corruption than all the legacy media.
Yes, you do.
That's something that's alienating to them. Now, it doesn't mean these left-wing advocacy groups like the New York Times and the Washington Post, CNN, don't do journalism now and again. Of course they do. But we should recognize them to be advocacy groups. And when you're an advocacy group and your buddies in power, like Biden, or your opponents in power, like Trump, they march in line
activists.
To an agenda.
Yeah, they're not journalists, they're activists. I just want to throw one more out because we had the headline just to show who this guy is when we talk about the CEO of Pfizer. He actually put a statement out. You probably saw it, Tom, but I want the American people to see it. Anyone who spreads misinformation about COVID vaccines should be considered criminals and should, right there it is, boom, should be considered criminals and be charged as such. This guy thinks that if you question his vax, that we now know for sure was used, fetal cells were used to create it, plus we're not going to release stuff for how long till we know all the side effects, all this, and you question it, you're a criminal. And a new poll also shows that half of the registered Democrats out there think that if you're not vaxxed, you should be locked down in your home and possibly a concentration camp, and 30% think you should have your kids taken away from you. The brainwashing is working, Tom.
Oh, I don't think it's brainwashing. I think the authoritarian instinct of the left, comes out when given opportunities, and you're seeing it here. And the chairman of Pfizer, I don't think he comes up with that on his own. That's a statement, in my experience, in my view, comes from his experience in dealing with friendly governments who are happy to talk like that about people who oppose vaccine mandates and the other restrictions that have been put in place senselessly that restrict liberty. I mean, when you take the position that people who break the COVID lockdown rules are criminals, it's not far to say that people who oppose philosophically, and politically as policy, these rules are criminals too.
Now, this is the kind of stuff we hear about in socialist and communist countries. It's not supposed to be happening in the United States of America. Tom, keep up the fight. Keep
Dan,
what you're doing.
Right now, you've got teams from the D.C. government walking around the city to private establishments to make sure that the vaccine passports are being enforced, that people aren't able to get food and sit in a restaurant and eat or go to the gym or whatever without showing their photo ID and their private medical information.
But no ID for voting, Tom. We don't need that if the John Lewis voting rights goes through. No ID for voting. Such hypocrites. I'm out of time, Tom. It's always a pleasure having you on. Please keep it up, man, at Judicial Watch. We need you. We all need you. Even the folks on the left that don't realize it, they need journalists like you and O'Keefe. Take care, Tom.
Thank you.
Yep.